Cabral with Fall River Community Media, and welcome to my second episode of Fall River Community Spotlight, where I highlight an upcoming event about giving back to the city of Fall River and the Fall River community through music and the arts. Two things that are very, very close to my heart, music and the arts. I'm so excited today to have family, friends, fellow musician, and coordinators of an upcoming event of the 7th anniversary show of the music of Michael Troy, which is taking place November 13th, 1 o'clock at the Narrow Center for the Arts. And the beneficiary of this event benefits the Durfee High School music programs. So in studio I have Michael Troy's wife, Mary Lou Manuels, Chuck Williams, singer-songwriter, friend, musician, coordinator of the event, and Jackie Francisco, Director of Fine and Performing Arts for Fall River Public Schools. So welcome. I know we're missing Mike Laureano today, but that's okay because I do have footage of his PowerPoint that he put together at one of the shows. So Mary Lou, who is Michael Troy?
Well, he was my husband, father of my 4 daughters. He was a family man. He did a lot of different things. When he got sick with cancer, people said to him that he should really start doing stuff with his music. He played guitar all the time. He wrote songs long before, people were actually hearing them. And then after that, he started to go up to Club Passim in Boston. And one day a week, pay $5. Sometimes he'd come home at 1 o'clock in the morning, play one of his songs. He did this for about 7 or 8 months, I think. And then the gentleman who ran the open mic, I think he still does actually, noticed him, yes, and called WUMB and Marilyn Ray Beyer and Bill Morrissey, and they all came to see him, and then that started it. It kind of was this guy that's older that came up. Nobody's ever seen him. He comes up, he plays one song that he wrote, and then he comes the next week and plays another song that he wrote. And so after doing this for about 7 or 8 months, he was telling my girls it was his schooling, because he could learn how to talk to people and, what do they call it, patter or something, so they could do that. So he did that every week.
And so he went to Durfee, of course.
He loved Fall River, loved Durfee. I believe he was the last graduating class that graduated from Durfee Theater, and he was proud of that.
Became very, very active in the program there, and
had a lot of friends, and loved Fall River and wrote about it. And put it on the map, actually.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So his stage name is Michael Troy.
Troy.
Okay, so how do you know how that came about?
Well, just because, like, in the area, he's known as Michael, should I say, Manuels, and he was like, I'll always be known as that. So, and he goes, Fall River was originally named Troy, and so that's how Michael Troy came about. It was a little bit hard to, we were all like, you want to change your name? But it worked. He knew what he was doing, and it worked. So.
And how did he become involved with you, Chuck? How did you know Michael?
Well, he had put out several albums at that point. Whispers in the Wind was his first one, Romancing the Moon. And when Romancing the Moon came out, I had just gotten to know him. I hadn't been a South Coast resident for a while. But I met him at the Boston Folk Festival, and we had talked before, and he was presenting his song, Romancing the Moon, and as it turns out, that was one of the many festivals that he was performing at and won the songwriting contests. He did that across the country in several different places. Kerrville was the biggest one. Woody Guthrie, Wildflower. Those are all festivals that he was at. So I got to admire his music, and I was a songwriter as well. So whenever I got a chance, I would be listening to him. And as it turns out, years later, I think it was in '09, he asked me if I would help him out with his booking. So I was his booking agent for the last few years that he was out there performing.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in that process, we wound up playing together, and we wrote several different songs. I was a co-writer on "I Want My Country Back" that we did back in the Bush days, and we also wrote a song that I have on my most recent album, "Take It to the Other Side," which is about climate control, climate change. But that's how I wound, because I did the same thing. I went up to Club Passim, and I went around to the Boston area coffee houses to try to get your music out there, and that's what songwriters do.
And back then, there were a ton of coffee houses in the area,
yeah.
but Boston seemed to be the place to be.
Oh yeah.
So Michael was always writing, always performing, always out there in the spotlight, so to speak. How did, and he passed how many years ago?
Be 7.
7, yeah.
7 years ago,
November
right? Well,
29th.
7th anniversary, right? Of what did he die of?
Cancer.
Lung
You know,
cancer or
Well, he
specific
had,
type?
it was lymphoma,
Oh, okay.
and then
Okay.
he had a stem cell transplant 3rd time.
Wow.
Couldn't fight it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. So during all that time, writing and performing and family and everything else, he had a lot of contacts with musicians in the area. And I'm sorry that Michael Ariano wasn't here today, but he had a whole story with Michael growing up and writing songs and a whole, and I'll show some footage of that and the type of songs that he wrote with Michael. Which is all about Fall River, all about the city, all about life in general. Very interesting, very captivating. I love it. I absolutely love it. And so he's made a lot of friends, musicians, singer-songwriters in the area that he collaborated with. What do you think the motivation to keep going and to aspire to, his music kept him going? What do you think?
I would say out of everything that he did, he always wanted his girls to be proud of him. And, because he fished, he cleaned floors, he
Mill worker.
He was a
worked
mill
in the
worker,
mills.
okay.
He did all those things, and on the side he played guitar and wrote. And so I'm not saying cancer was a good thing, but it got him to do his music, and he accomplished. His daughters were very proud of him. He has 4 albums out. People know him, and it just,
What he loved to do the most was write true songs.
yeah.
Very true life
Yeah,
forming
absolutely.
songs, and you can tell through his music that was affected a lot of people, especially in the city, because of the singer-songwriter musicians that he became in contact with perform his music and his songs. So it was a natural fit to be able to aspire and create sort of a legacy or foundation for his music. So with that, I know an upcoming event is coming November 13th, right? Do you want to talk about how Durfee High School plays a part of this?
And the Narrows.
And yes,
and
the
the Narrows,
Narrows, and all the musicians
Yeah.
that are coming to perform.
Yeah. We put out, Michael's last album was called I Am American, and Michael was not able to perform at that event because he was sick. So we had musicians come in that we selected, and they performed his music, and that was the foundation. That's probably the wrong word. That was the start of the foundation, because we realized that people love his music whether he's playing it or not, and which was a revelation to a lot of us. But what Michael had said to me at one time, Mary Lou and he went to an event for Durfee, and the Durfee band was on the field. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mary Lou, but Michael was surprised at how small the band was, that they didn't have a lot of instruments, and he didn't quite understand why. So he said to me, if there's anything that you can do for me, or if there's anything that you can do for Durfee High School music department, try to do that. And I said I'd be glad to do it. That was my charge. That was my challenge. So what we wound up doing is, based on that first concert of I Am American, we kept that format moving forward. We created the Michael Troy Memorial Music Foundation. And that's when my buddy Kurt Handler came on board with me. He was the first person I got on the board, along with Mary Lou. And that's where we started to decide that we'll have an annual concert, much like Neil Young did way back in the day at the Bridge concert for the school that his son went to for so many years. Kind of used that for the pattern, and got everything together, and even got in the Durfee High School people involved with it. Some of the new instructors or teachers were involved in it. Matt Damaris's daughter was in the first couple of years when she was still at the school. She got involved in it. And here we are 7 years later doing the same thing, and raising money to help out the Durfee's music department, songwriters, recording, supplies. Jackie will probably tell you something about something like that, but that's how it all evolved. It was a brainstorm from Michael from coming to a Durfee event that he thought, geez, we can do better than that. Maybe there's something we can do. And we've been doing it for...
That's incredible. And his music lives on today.
Yes, it does.
So talk about Kurt a little bit. Kurt, I know, is your buddy, a singer-songwriter, musician as well, but it was also fire department?
Yes, he was a fire department.
Here in the city.
Yep, and he retired from that several year ago, many years ago, actually. And he and Michael go way back. I mean, way back, far longer than I did. So he jumped at the chance to being involved in the foundation, and ran with the ball, and was big on marketing and getting out to the community to let them know what was going on. And he and I were best of friends.
I knew him before Mike.
Yeah, that's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did you know Kurt
just
before Mike?
from where we used to, actually America Street. There used to be a fireman that owned a place there, and we all would just gather.
Wow, that's
And then
amazing.
Mike would come, and he was the entertainment. It's like, wow, first time I had met him. Anyway,
Wow, that's a great story. That's a great story. And how does all the musicians, who know his music, that are all performing at this event, and you can see them right here, nice little poster of what's coming up. It's quite the lineup of people.
We're going to have Danielle Miraglia from up in Boston, Matt Borello from New Hampshire, used to live in Dighton. Joan Aiken will be here, Tom Smith, myself, and those are the solo artists. Then we have Redfish, which is Gary Fish and Steve Redfern. We have Johnny Botello and Mike Correa. We have Louis Lehman and his daughter Jerry Karam Kozak. And we have the Flying Laureano brothers. That's Mike, Tom, and Frank Laureano that as a big part of it. And then we'll also have a quintet from Durfee's High School again.
So talk about the quintet. I have been videotaping this show for the past, I want to say 5 years maybe, and I had no idea that there was a contact over there at Durfee actually performing at the show, and I thought, oh, I know Gary. Gary Bigelow.
Gary Bigelow, yeah.
I had produced a play with him in Tiverton, and I knew his wife. His wife used to be the music director at First Baptist Church in Fall River, and I knew her father. So all this music and theater and everything else, that was all connected. All connected. And so for me, that was my gateway into, okay, what is this all about?
Yeah.
So explain how that little quintet came about.
Actually, I don't think it was a quintet. Initially, it was a quartet.
Okay.
And it was Gary Bigelow was the spearhead of that one. He was the front man.
And he was the music director.
Yes, and he's a music
just recently retired.
Yes, last year I believe it was. And he wound up getting Izzy Damaris, right? She played bass, and so she was part of the band. So the idea was, and our part of it, to get them to help us to help them. So we got Durfee people involved. It brought in a few more people for the show every year, and it helps them turn around and get money that they've been able to go out and buy a lot of equipment.
Wow, including instruments and
Yes.
whatever they need for the music department.
Yeah.
And so the beneficiary of this event,
Good segue.
Jackie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Jackie Francisco is the Director of Fine and Performing Arts for Fall River Public Schools.
Yes.
We originally were going to have Matt in here, but Matt, who is the principal over at Durfee High School. So welcome, and so excited to have you here.
Yeah.
What does this mean to Durfee High School? Explain. I know the music department over there. There is a memorial. There is a plaque on the wall, which is a tribute, to Michael and his music. Explain how that.
Sure. So thank you first for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So it's funny because I started in this position 7 years ago. So
Wow.
I too was probably at the same football game that Michael was at, and saw that our band was super small. The kids were some were in uniform, some were in street clothes, performing on the field.
Wow.
And I was sad because I know the potential at Durfee. I know it, and I've lived it. And so I came on and I thought, man, we got to work on that, right? So
Jackie, you're a native of Fall River.
I am a native of Dartmouth, New Bedford.
Okay.
And then I've worked in the city for 10 years. I worked
Okay.
at Talbot as the principal and the school redesign coach prior to principal. But then I happily took this job on 7 years ago and met these guys, right, the champions of this work. And so we sat together, and I remember us all coming together in a meeting room and going, what are we going to do? And so these guys, they built it from the ground up, right? So it was like, what is our purpose? What do we want to do? And then how can Durfee be a part of it? And so the first year we started small. We started just by kind of building that groundwork for the mission. Remember, we built a mission around the foundation and kind of started to talk about, like, if we get this, what will it provide for our kids and for our programming? And then we determined, it's going to go directly to musical instruments for this program. So we think of band, we think of orchestra, we think of chorus, but we also think of guitar and piano and music technology. And so we've tried to really align the work and the funding to directly go into the hands of kids to produce for them quality instruments. So the thing about learning an instrument, right, and sometimes in an urban district, is you may get an older instrument, an older guitar, an older violin, right? So that doesn't really motivate kids to do high quality playing and performing if the thing that they're working on is constantly in need of repair, right? So we have been able to, through this program, year after year, A, build up a higher amount of funding that comes out of the event, and B, engage the kids in knowing Michael Troy's music, playing parts of Michael Troy's music. We've done that in guitar class, where we've literally had the guitar teacher tear apart some of the songs into smaller, tangible portions for our kids so they can learn how to play it. But also teach them about what it means to be from Fall River and use that identity and sense of self in this city to show its value, to be like, you are from Fall River, and that is a great thing. And look at what someone who was able to build a narrative like Michael did, right? So he was a Fall River guy, right? And just, he was a good guy, and he loved this city, but he had a story to tell, right? And he had a voice, and he was able to take that voice and transition it into music, right? So that people could hear it, could understand where he was coming from, right? As a person of this city. And so then that became his identity within this city. And so it's our job to kind of, create that event, get the funding, talk to the teachers, see what is needed, put those instruments in the hands of kids, and then go, now that you have all of these things, what story are you going to tell? Right? And so how is that relevant to who you are as a Fall River person? Were you born and bred here? Did you come here from somewhere else? That's awesome. Let's teach you how to tell that story through music, right? And so we use his work to sort of synthesize for kids. Look, this was a guy that grew up here that made it, through perseverance, through grit, through determination, and through art and craft, and was able to craft those pieces so that they're meaningful. And still today, you can read a piece from 20 years ago and go, yep, I get it, right? And so that work is what got us to this table today. That work is super important, and it's going to live on in this annual event, and I remember years ago when we had those first events, Mary Zima, who at the time was one of our teachers, who's now retired, but Mary was great in taking some of those Michael Troy songs and bringing them to the kids, and so she would teach them how to play them. She would teach them about the lyrics and kind of break that down at the word, the phrase, and the full piece level so that they understood. Because we have kids in our guitar classes that come from, they enter at a variety of levels, right? There are kids that love guitar and have played a little. There are kids that haven't ever touched a guitar, right? And don't know how to read music. And so you've got to make it accessible to all of them. So she was able to do that. And then she was able to play at the show. And we've had so many of our teachers engage and play at the shows, from Gary Bigelow to Jason Newell, Jay Treelor. There are so many of them. Yes, and Matt Damaris has modeled the practice himself, right? And so and Matt's daughter, right? So it's been great to see it build. Where on year one we were like, if we could just make $1,500, that would be amazing. And now we're like, 5,000, yeah, right? So we're growing, we're maintaining, sustaining. We're gonna keep it going. Because it is important. It is important to keep Michael's memory alive. It's important to let our kids know that music is important to them, right? Especially as a Fall River native.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It can
So
be healing
In some
music.
circles, Michael is known as the poet laureate of Fall River.
oh,
Dave Palmater, who used to be with WUMB Folk Radio in Boston, dubbed him the
Oh,
poet
no
laureate
kidding.
of Fall River. Yeah.
wow,
It'd be
didn't
his
know
birthday Monday. He'd be 71.
that. No kidding. His
Yes, my-
birthday's coming up
and
on
my
Monday.
granddaughter was born on his birthday. She was supposed to be his anniversary when he died, but she came 5 weeks early on his birthday. And my daughter named her Cecilia out of just liking the name. And then one of Mike's musician friends writes down Cecilia is the patron saint of musicians.
Oh,
And she
wow.
goes,
Yeah.
That's
coincidence?
Yeah.
So,
There's
yeah.
a band right here in Fall River, Santa Cecilia, right? Yeah, that's one of our bands.
Wow, so interesting. I had no idea all of this.
Yeah.
So that's what I like to do is introduce the stories about musicians and people in the arts in the city. And what a wonderful opportunity to not only give back to the community and to the city. What are some of the things that Durfee has purchased through this program, aside from instruments and like uniforms maybe, or programs that help, you know, the students learn, teachers?
One of the first years that we were involved, I stopped into one of the rooms and there was a pallet of ukuleles that,
Oh,
they had
wow.
that they had purchased, because the ukulele is a great item, a great instrument
Yeah.
to start people out with, and that was one of the first big purchases that at least I saw at that point. But you know, I've got a photo of the guitars
Yeah.
that have been purchased, and it's like 30-foot long, 2 tiers, guitar after guitar
Yeah.
after
Oh
guitar.
my
Yeah,
goodness.
we went from having a bare bones set of guitars for kids that looked like something from the Salvation Army to having, like you said, literally like a wall of beautiful instruments for our kids to be able to learn
Wow.
on. We've bought ukes, we've bought microphones. We have bought keyboards. We did not buy new uniforms with this money. Uniforms cost a lot of money
Yeah,
for a band.
they're-
They're like
yeah.
$27,000 for a new set. Not that I no, but we did get a whole new set of band uniforms through another set of funding that I was able to get elsewhere. But we are now cooking with gas. Like, we have brand new marching band uniforms. We have a
Wow.
bigger band. We're coming back from COVID. And it's a great thing to see, you know, grow. But yeah, I mean, we try to keep it specific to the mission, which is instruments in the hands of kids. So no, it's not for funding of positions. No, it's not for like sort of technology-ish kind of things. No. Instruments in the hands of kids. So that's what we commit to.
Well, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. I am so excited for this event. Of course, I will be videotaping again. And Patrick, you know, over at the
Yeah.
Narrows,
Patrick has been
wonderful to work with.
He has partnered with us from the first year. In fact, he was the one that suggested that we create a foundation, a nonprofit charity, so that the funding would be truly 100% back to Durfee, because before you have your taxes and whatnot. But not only have we reached out to the community to support this, but the community is supporting us as well, in that we have used the Narrows Center for the Arts for the last 7 years with the full support of their volunteers and from Patrick, and we couldn't, as a foundation, be happier than having a home like that to create the event each year.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on the show. We're going to wrap this up. I want everyone to come see this. It's online. There are posters like this out there. This is the 7th anniversary show of the music of Michael Troy, November 13th, 1 o'clock at the Narrows, to benefit the Durfee High School music programs. So hope you'll all attend, and we'll see you there.
Now you're rolling along down these Fall River hills. You and the Chevy, forever still. Hard knocks and granite blocks in these tired old mills you called home. You are home.